the title of this presentation is Virtual Weaning, or it should be Virtual Weaning, given that it's a question. But I thought I'd take the opportunity here to give you more of a context as to where that question came from, start to touch on the answer to that question, but really give you an overview of Project 6 and the awesome opportunity that I see there for the New South Wales dairy industry. And really, Project 6 is all about future systems with a strong emphasis, or if you like, focus on dairy data. So why focus on data? Why the interest in data? So you can see there from all these squiggly lines on the right-hand side that not really a dairy cow, but really the things that dairy cows are made from. So these are actually proteins on the right-hand side, and these proteins, the function of the proteins is dictated by their shape. And really, as I said, they're really about the building blocks of life, these proteins. But there's a lot of effort required and time for the imagery to determine the structure of these proteins. So really, in the past year, there's been such a big advance in terms of data science that now we're able to, through Google's DeepMind program, if you like, model or determine the shape of these proteins through, if you like, a data-driven approach versus the more ground-up approach in terms of determining the structure. So it's really shortcutted the whole program and put a whole heap of scientists like me out of work. So all those scientists that were focused on the imaging of those proteins really now don't have a job, because this Google DeepMind program, through this system called AlphaFold, can now tell us the structure of these proteins just from the amino acid sequencing or the amino acids that get presented. So there's been, and that's just in the past year. So there's a huge opportunity particularly for our New South Wales dairy industry, just around focusing on data science. Why? Because our dairy industry is typically flush with data. There's a lot of data there. These advances are being made in terms of data-driven methods to, if you like, exploit the value of data. And also, I guess there's all this leveraging that can happen by bringing people with that expertise into the New South Wales dairy industry. And thanks to DairyUp, we're doing just that. So this computational method is predicting protein shape from the amino acid sequence. And I guess you could say, so what? This is really just revolutionizing the way in which we understand the functioning of cells, but it's also revolutionizing drug discovery. So really, why are we focusing on data in Project 6? Because of that, huge advances in data science. Dairy typically has lots of data, so let's leverage and exploit that as much as possible. And if you want any further reading on that, check out the link below down in Nature. And if you search up AlphaFold, that would work. That will get you there. So in terms of our RedMeat program, I thought a great example of this, just hang on a second. So in terms of our RedMeat program, this is a really great example of, if you like, an example of a data-driven method, but with a more focused application towards agriculture versus, if you like, protein structure. So just as an example, as Niall was saying, our focus in our RedMeat program is all about heat stress, around data-driven systems for heat stress detection. And the people that are involved in that program are all listed here. So you've got Sabrina, who you'll be meeting shortly in this program. We've also got Anna Chilingarian, who's also coming into the New South Wales dairy industry out of working with Rio Tinto. So bringing that expertise into our dairy industry. Also, we have Peter Thompson there, who is our biometrician in the group. And we've got Amanda Dalty too. So showing this strong partnership with industry around the sensors that we apply on animals. So in terms of what we're doing for the RedMeat industry, just as an example of this sort of data-driven approach, given that we're early on in the DairyUp program now, just to show you an example of what can be done. We have these inputs in terms of sensor-derived cattle panting data. And we're getting that every minute of the day, pretty much, for lots and lots of animals. And alongside that, we're pairing that data up in terms of climate data. And what that's enabling is this. Now, let me step you through this just a little bit. Even I struggle to understand this, to be honest, and this is really Anna's area and Nick's area, who is our undergraduate really working on this. It's all to do with this, how do these climate variables interact, if you like, to dictate how much an animal pants. So we're importing all this panting data and asking the question from this process of, if you like, this genetic algorithm to work out how climate interacts with cows, to tell us, what variables should we be putting in our model to better predict heat stress. So what you can see from here, so these are days, if you like, this is the amount of days of climate data that impact the animal. So if you like, 6 is 6 days. So 6 days of these variables impact the animal. So if you see there, that's solar radiation and relative humidity. So 6 days, the solar radiation and humidity over 6 days are impacting these cattle, these beef cattle through time. So that's what this data-driven method is actually allowing us to do. It's revealing this interaction between animal and environment, and how what we're using that for now is to do this. What we're using it for is to change how heat stress is monitored in the red meat industry. And what we're seeing is that there's an increase in accuracy for heat stress, in determining heat stress, that this method is enabling from current methods. It actually improves the accuracy or reduces error by 30 or 40%. But what this also does is this whole scientific discovery piece. It allows us scientists to ask the right questions. So that's just one example of this whole data-driven method revealing this interaction between biology and environment that we can now exploit for the betterment of industry. So what about the dairy industry? I've talked about the red meat industry. So now I'm going to go through some whats and whys of the 3 sub-projects that we have for Program 6. So the first sub-project is dairy cattle resilience to extreme climates. Why are we wanting to focus on dairy cattle resilience to extreme climates? I'm sure most of the people, most of the audience here today well knows the extremes in climate that we've been facing over the past couple of years. And the IPCC report just recently released suggests that that's going to continue, if not become more pronounced, these extreme climate events. So our question here is, are there animals that are more resilient to others in terms of these extreme events that we could potentially select from or select for using this whole data-driven technique? So that's sub-project 1. Our second sub-project is all around data-driven feeding systems. It's all based around the cost of feed in our dairy systems, and how can we optimize the allocation of that feed to individual animals whilst maintaining or reducing complexity of decision-making on farms. And I'll touch on what that's about in a second. The third one is all about optimizing intervention. So just as per our RedMeat program, what are some ways in which we could use these on-animal sensors or the data that's created on those on-animal sensors to give us earlier alerts around reduced health and even intervene in terms of how we can better ameliorate heat in those systems as well, all with the focus on improving the welfare of the animals that's in our care, but also, which usually comes alongside welfare, is the production and profit equations as well. So who is going to conduct this work alongside me? You see there on the right-hand side is Anna, who is our data scientist, who's coming into, which has been enabled to come into the dairy industry thanks to this DairyUp program, and Sabrina as well, Sabrina Lomax, who you'll be hearing from a little bit. As Noel said, one of the focuses of DairyUp is on capacity building. What we'll be bringing in also into Project 6 are 2 PhDs, which is fantastic in terms of, if you like, replacing me in the dairy industry into the future, which would be perhaps a good thing, and bringing that additional capacity into the dairy industry, and also learning from people like Anna and Sabrina around both the systems context and also the data science context of, if you like, how we can exploit that data for our dairy industry. So it's super exciting. And we already have some fantastic candidates who are lining up to apply for these positions, which is absolutely fantastic. So I've covered the what, why, and who in Project 6. Now I'm just going to touch briefly on the how. So around dairy cattle resilience, around extreme climate, so this is 6A, what we've managed to do just recently from DataGene is grab the herd test data since 2000 for the entire New South Wales dairy industry, which is fantastic for us to have a look at, to visualize and explore in terms of the value that's there, is the first thing to say. What we've also done is obtain climate over the same period. And our, if you like, our first go at this is to look at the diversity in cattle response to drought. So that individual animal diversity, which is a super interest of mine, how these individual animals perform in the drought differently. And we'll do that by pairing up the herd test data alongside the climate data across time. What that'll enable, and we're working alongside DataGene and Jenny Price around this, is perhaps an index looking at the resilience of these cattle to our cattle in the New South Wales dairy industry to extreme environments. What it will also allow, and this is where we're also interested in working with our partner farms in DairyUp and the farmers that are in this audience right now, is around these changes in management associated with drought. Are there learnings from the diversity in your farmer response to drought that we can learn from? What worked well, what didn't? And can we translate that across our industry, all with benefits of production, reproduction, and welfare? And I suggest there should be another one there around the human element as well, around how humans cope with these extreme pieces as well, could well be integrated here as well. Super exciting here as well is that this enables fundamental discovery as well, that this diversity in cattle response to drought enables us to look at the mechanisms by which these animals apply to enable their resilience. An example is published by Ghana in Nature around where they sourced these extreme animals, brought them into one place and worked out what the hell was going on. And that's super high impact for science. So there's wins for farming and wins for science and wins for the overall industry, I believe, in such programs. Just some initial results or initial visualization of some of the data that we have. On the left-hand side of the screen here is what's released by the Bureau of Meteorology. Anna has visualized that and done the same thing for us for the whole of Australia through time, which then enables us to reach into this data set and pick out any dairying region that we want in terms of climate data. Might look like just a copy and paste job, but trust me, there's a lot of work and nous in terms of generating this. So we have this in-house now through DairyUp. What we've also got is herd test data. We've got 16 million New South Wales dairy herd test records by postcode, and you can see them all here in the record. Some areas herd testing more than others, with 800,000 cattle recorded since 2000. So these are the cattle that we're going to pair up with that climate data. So some initial results out of the Bega region, and this is kind of promising for us in terms of selecting these animals that could be more resilient than others and start to work through the process of how drought is impacting, if you like, culling decisions or termination decisions of cattle on farm. Here you see this blue line is the amount of, if you like, terminated cattle through time since 2005 in terms of what we would expect above normal. So what I've done there is looked at how many cattle are currently culled per annum, around about, in this Bega region, and said, for this certain year, is this above or below normal? And so you can see this is the blue line going through time here. So you can see here in this year, 300 cattle or 300 units were terminated more than what we would expect through time. And all the way through, and as Sheen was saying there, obviously the recent seasons, 2007, 17 to 18, 19, not such good years in terms of levels of soil moisture that are in the soil. So this is really an indication of the amount of soil moisture that's in the ground through time. What I've also done there is paired that up with actual soil moisture levels that are in the ground. And you can see here for these low soil moisture times that there are higher levels of animals exiting our system. And this tells me that there's as a first cut at this is I think we're in for a good shot around looking at that resilience of animals in terms of individual context through time. So very first shot at this, looking very, very promising. So in terms of 6B project, this is all around data-driven feeding. What we're looking to do here is pair up daily milk yield data alongside grain intake data and look at individual animals or generate individual animal models of response to a given level of grain-based concentrate, leading to new traits for potentially for feed conversion or systems to allocate grain-based concentrate within boundaries. In other words, we have a certain feed budget that we've allocated a certain amount of grain to. Who are the best animals within that herd with a production and profit, within a production and profit optimization context to feed that grain to. If you like, farming within boundaries is a nice way to frame this. And that's a term that Yanni often makes, is this farming within boundaries, allowing the system to operate, to optimize within that boundary. So some initial results that we have off this, we've modeled the system response in terms of, allowing that system in optimized allocation of grain to individual animals to allocate to those individual animals. And we've shown a 10% increase in milk yield for the same level of grain-based concentrate. That requires validation. And this is what we're going to be focusing on in the DairyUp program and potentially on our DairyUp partner farms. Taking this from the model to real world, I'm not going to touch on this too much, just saying that what was actually allocated differed quite a bit to the suggested allocation according to the model. On the right-hand side is the process that was followed in terms of stepping through a dynamic Bayesian model, and that would take me at least 15 minutes in itself to do, so I'm not going to do that. Just saying that there's quite nifty equations in behind this. But again, what this system would allow is that farming within boundaries, this would operate within the background of the system. So our last 6C is all about optimizing intervention on animal sensor data. And this is where this whole virtual weaning question comes in. And what we're looking to do there is if you like, partner up with our DairyUp partner farms, looking at differences in livestock phenotype for things like heat and reduced health, leading through to new traits for heat and health and an earlier change in management. So a similar process for almost all of our programs: data collection, data analysis or data science, leading through to a change in action for our farmers. So the answer to the title about virtual weaning, ? That is going to be covered by Sarah Mack, who has our PhD presentation tomorrow. Given that my 15-minute context here, I thought best to give you a P6 overview. Sarah is going to be covering that question, who she's working with Colin. And you can see Sarah here, and here are the tags that she's using as well. And the program here around P6, C6, is all about securing fantastic PhDs for this program. And as I said, if these PhDs are any indication as to the capacity building for our New South Wales dairy industry, I think the industry is looking good in terms of these new scientists that are coming into industry. Way better than older fogies like me. And we're looking to work with industry right now on generating topics for this program as well. So keen to hear feedback on topics for 6C as well. So there you go. There is the snapshot of Project 6 about future systems and dairy data. Thank you.